I spoke for Larry Taylor. Missionaries that we also support, Dave and Mary Campbell, they came over for the ladies' retreat, Mary did, but then also really for an encouragement, and they really needed the encouragement. So we were kind of there multifaceted. I'd love to say, I've heard the word vacation. It was not a vacation. It was cool. I don't want to sound negative. We had the privilege of being able to see things, but it was really ministry, and it was really ministering to people. And one of the things as a missionary to the UK that was always beneficial to us was having people come over who were believers and fellowshipping. Man, we needed that. And when you're in a country that's dark, spiritually dark, man, sometimes you just go through struggles. And I'll kind of talk through some things, because we did have the privilege of, we went to Belgium. We've never been in Belgium. If you want to go to the next slide. This was us arriving into Brussels. We left Monday, May 11th, and we arrived there Tuesday morning, the 12th. And so, I think every time we've done it, I'll sit up here. Justin, when you fly over, do you fly over at night, usually? I've never flown over during the day. It's always been like overnight. It's miserable for me. Some people can sleep. I can't sleep because like I got long legs and you sit in these chairs and I can't afford first class. So I'm stuck like this. And we had just fortunately 2 seats. We didn't have 3 people beside us, so I don't have to worry about like falling asleep on anyone. But so we arrive in like in the morning when you're tired. And there's 6 hours ahead of us. And so as you arrive in, I mean, it's a beautiful country. And we arrived into Brussels Airport. You can go to the next one. Here's just some quick facts, and there'll be some other ones. Belgians and I'm just kind of quoting what the missionaries in Belgium say. So, like German missionaries, the notes. They might contradict some of this, or they might agree, maybe not completely, but what Debbie was telling us, and we saw this repeatedly, is Belgians see themselves as wealthy, and they really don't need the Lord. They have their needs met, and oftentimes, like in Europe, like when we were in Wales, the government does a lot of assistance. So for people who are lacking in areas like housing and stuff, the government will usually provide housing. So like where we were in Wales, the house beside us could be a government house. There wasn't like, okay, this is the poor people and this is where the government puts them up. It was like open every house wherever there was availability. They openly proclaim homosexuality, and you're going to see when we go through Brussels, I'll point it out. I was joking with Debbie, and I said the national flag of Belgium is the LGBT, the pride flag. Everywhere we went, it was flying. It was on the buildings. It was everywhere. And here's my take on this. And some people may disagree with me. That's okay. But my take on this, and we've seen this in our culture, is if you see it enough, you become numb to it, and it's not a big deal. And this is kind of like what it is with the governments. I don't think we see this in our own government, not just in European government, but I think we see this in our own government, is they try to regulate sin, they try to regulate morality, they come up with all these rules. Like when we lived in the UK, they didn't have guns because, guns kill people. Not people, guns do. So they took guns away, so people hold up convenience stores with screwdrivers. Or they take vans and they drive into crowds with vans. So they try to regulate morality, which you can't, and they also try to come up with, and I think we see this in our own government and our own culture, if you can give a title or something to something, then it's not sin. And so you see that, you would just blatantly see that over there, and I'll point it out in our things. Belgium has 3 official languages, French, German, and Flemish, which is a form of Dutch. Now, interestingly, Debbie told me most people learn English in school. Man, they sure as heck didn't talk it. So I didn't find many people who spoke English. And I'll say this, when you go to another country, like when we were in Wales, England, Scotland, Ireland, they speak English. And even though there's differences, you can still communicate. You're really humbled when you can't speak their language. And I'll talk more about that later too. She told me something like less than 2% are evangelical Christians. I think it's probably even smaller than that. Next slide. We arrived in Brussels early. Our first day, the 12th, that Tuesday, we arrived, we had breakfast, we went to sleep for a couple hours, we woke up, and we just spent the day with the Taylors. Next slide. Wednesday, the 13th, we waited. Dave and Mary Campbell, they came over from Wales, and they didn't fly over. They actually brought their vehicle so they could have it. So they brought a ferry over. And they brought their car over because it was the same price as flying, so that way they'd have a vehicle. When they arrived there, it was later in the afternoon, and the Taylors live, is anybody familiar with Waterloo? Yeah, anybody else? Okay, well, you guys have a song. Hey, that's good. Has anybody ever heard of this guy, they say he's short, but he really wasn't, this dictator named Napoleon? That's where Napoleon was defeated. And it was really kind of interesting. So we went to Waterloo because it was, it was like, you could go to the next slide. It was really the next town over. The statue's really significant because the lion represented England, and the symbol for France is a rooster. And it's a fighting animal, things like that. Well, the lion is facing France to remind them never to come into that area again because they'll be defeated. Another significant thing, I don't know if it's true or not, what the people say, but the reason that mound is so high is because that's where they piled all the bodies when they buried them. Yeah, a ton of people died there. Napoleon got defeated there, then they sent him to another island. I'm not really a historian person, so I'm probably slaughtering the history of this, but they sent him to another island. Here's the reason why he lost, and we got to experience this while we were there. His techniques for winning wars was they would bring in cannons and they would hit the cannonballs and they would bounce and then they would take out a lot of people. He didn't plan on the rain. So they struggled to advance the cannons. He was sick, and when you shoot a cannonball into mud, just rest right there. So they defeated him. The Prussians come in. So you go to the next slide. It's just a couple, and you can go to the next one. These are just things from the museum. Thursday, the 14th through Saturday, the 16th, was the ladies' event in Bruges. Now, Jean Taylor had told me this is the first time they did it in Bruges, and it was kind of a last-minute thing. They planned it during the holiday Ascension, and does everybody know what the Ascension is? Anybody know what the Ascension is? You do know. Yeah. What happened 40 days after Jesus rose from the dead? He ascended into heaven. They celebrate it 40 days after Easter. So it's a national holiday over there. And as a result of it, they do their ladies' retreat around it because that's when they can get the most ladies. You'll see pictures. There were a ton of ladies at this ladies' retreat. So we're going to Bruges, and here's something interesting they told us. And there'll be something interesting about the Germany when we go to the cathedral. Well, there's a cathedral, there's a church in Bruges that claim they have the blood of Jesus Christ. And so every year during the Ascension, they parade it through the streets, and they have tons of people coming out for it. I'm sarcastic. I said it was probably Jesus' blood, and they call it Jesus' blood. Yeah. Anyhow, so this is a big thing, and so that was what was going on there. Now, Bruges, I call it bougie, if you know the term, or a better word for Bruges is a la carte. Oh my gosh, that place was expensive. Next, let's see, it's very expensive, very worldly. It was a blessing. All right, next slide. There was Mary teaching. She had an interpreter because, as I said, Belgium is 3 languages. They had ladies from different countries, from France and different countries. So there was actually 3 or 4 different languages there. So the lady who was interpreting for Mary interpreted in French. And then the people who needed the Dutch interpretation, there'd be another lady that sat beside them and interpreted from the French or the English into their language. Next slide. And these were all the ladies at the ladies' retreat. So it was really cool. And there were ladies, as I said, from 3, 4 different countries that were there. Next slide. So during the ladies' retreat, Dave Campbell and I, we got to spend some time together. So we would go into Bruges and we drove around it. I'm not a city person, but if you're not familiar with Europe, if you've got to go to the bathroom, you got to pay to pee everywhere you go. And it's usually like €1. And so everything is a la carte. You pay for everything there. Next picture. This is like, Bruges is beautiful. They got these canals. Some people call it like the Venice of the, I don't know, east or west or whatever it is. But next picture. That's Dave and Mary. As we were touring on Friday, we had the opportunity during the ladies' event to go out and tour. Next picture. They have these really cool pictures for people. Caution, slippery surface. In Wales, they got one for old people. Caution. They really do. You got these like old people. Watch out for old people. Next one. Now, that's not a really good picture, but like, who in here's ever stayed in a hotel? And in the morning, you want to go get coffee? and you go downstairs and you get a cup of coffee, it's not free. It was $2, and you can't see this, but that was really a little bit bigger than an espresso cup of coffee. So I just did that so you can see how expensive Bruges is. Next picture. Next one. And so I'm not sure if that last one was like really the one of if that was the church that had the blood or not, but beautiful town, beautiful city. If you can ever go to Belgium, it is really worth going over there and seeing it. Belgium, as I said, has 3 languages. Brussels, where the tailors are, is mostly French. Bruges is predominantly Flemish, which is mostly Dutch. I don't really know where the German part is, but on the way back from the ladies' retreat on Saturday, has anybody ever heard of Hill 62? You would have to be a World War I military buff. But so one of the ladies at the retreat said, hey, if you guys want to see something cool, you should go to Hill 62. So it's historical trenches from World War I. There was a bunch of Canadian troops that went there and got killed. There was somewhere between 14 and 15,000 people total that died, 1,375 Canadians. Has anybody ever heard of Flanders Fields? It's a great poem. Okay, this is good history for us. What did we just celebrate on Sunday? Memorial Day. So over in Europe, they have something called Remembrance Sunday, and they read a poem called Flanders Field, and it's in this exact area where all of these people have died. And are you familiar with the poppies? And they wear them to them. That actually started here, but we never continued on with the tradition. They do. And so there's poppy fields everywhere. And so this area of Belgium is near France and significant because you've got these little towns in the middle of nowhere that have these incredible military significance. Next picture. Here's the one statue to the Canadian people, the Canadian armies that died. The next one. These are some of the weapons from the field. And I'm only putting up like 3-4 pictures from each thing, but there's literally hundreds of these guns and weapons and all kinds of stuff that was recovered from this field. I would say it's amazing because, like, next picture, these trenches, if these were in America, we would have them covered up with glass and you wouldn't be able to go on them. And they're just like preserved to this day, and you can walk on them. You see these big, massive ditches where like bombs hit and things like that. And it's really humbling to think, like, I had a picture where there's cows, but there's a farmer's field right behind it, and in the middle of these fields, thousands of people, tens of thousands of people died. Next picture. And so next one. And so these are just some of the people that were buried there. You would drive through the town and you'd see other cemeteries just like this, just literally hundreds, thousands of people, these cemeteries. Next picture. And this was the town of, I don't know if I say it right, Ypres, something like that. The significance is you see that arch there? That'll be symbolic of when we go to Paris, there's the Arch de Triomphe. And it's significant because it's kind of like that, but it has all the names of the people inside of it as you drive into this town, all the names of the people that died engraved on the walls. Next picture. This is just one, I just thought that building was really cool looking. And as you see, there's a sign. We see the P, so we know it's parking. I couldn't tell you what that word is, but you know it's parking. So, next picture. All right, and Sunday the 17th, we were at the Taylor's church, and then Sunday evening, the Taylor's 2 daughters, they've got 2 daughters, Becky and Debbie. We support Debbie, and Becky, their other daughter. They took us to Brussels, but during the day, during their church service, I got to be honest, I mean, it literally brought tears to my eyes. Here you are, a Sunday morning in a church in Belgium, and you've got these people that are speaking a language, French. I have no clue what they're saying, and they're singing and praising the Lord, and it's just so exciting to see. 6 hours ahead of us. So before we even have church, they've already been done with church, and they've been praising the Lord, and it's really... Sunday was really the moment that struck me the most. The ladies, they gave their testimonies. Larry had asked me to preach. And here's some of the things. Brussels is the home to the EU, and I'll talk about that in the pictures. But there's such a great need for missionaries. And there's a need for missionaries long term. I had the Taylor's son, Andrew. He interpreted for me. And so, you get up here on a Sunday morning, and I speak too long, 45 minutes or something, and it's, everybody's like, all right, when are you going to finish? It's different when you go there because you've got to say something. You can't say too much because you've got to wait for them to interpret for you. And you can't really go deep because you want to get your message across, but you can't really go real deep because you don't speak the language. And so I got up there. I started late because like every lady gave a testimony, which was really cool because like a lot of them didn't even know they were doing it. And it was really awesome to see how like through this ladies event, how it just touched their hearts and it challenged them. And then I get up there and I preach. And then when I get done preaching, Larry comes up afterwards and he closes in prayer. And you know how pastor is. You pray and 5-minute prayer, right? I have no clue what he said because he said it in French. He's really passionate, I can tell you that much. And afterwards, it dawned on me, and I told Larry, I said, Larry, you've said more in your 5-minute prayer than I did in my entire sermon. And he's gracious. He's like, oh, no, it was a good message. I'm like, no, but here's the difference, and this is what we lose sight of. The importance of having a missionary on the field long-term who speaks the language, because Larry could speak to their heart, I couldn't. What he said in that 5 minutes, he knew exactly because he knew those people. He's been there 50 years. His health isn't doing good. And here's the reality. I was asking him, I said, Larry, when you retire, are you going to come back to the States? And he's like, no. And I don't know exactly how old he is. I'm guessing he's probably late 70s, maybe close to 80, maybe not quite. I don't know, maybe he's 70s, somewhere in there. He's old. His health isn't real good. And I've asked him, I'm like, Larry, have you, because, right, what's the goal of the missionaries? We'll see missionaries go to the field and they plant 1,500 churches, and in Europe, that's not going to happen. I call it you guys know the Motel 6 saying? We'll leave the lights on? That's really what it is. We're trying to keep the lights on. And I said, Larry, have you ever tried to turn your church over to someone? And he's like, I have. I've sent these young guys who want to be pastors to the States. They come to the States, they never come back. He's got a couple right now that they're praying to take over their church, but the one lady was telling Mary, her kids don't want to go to Belgium. And so there's a likelihood that this couple may not take over his church. The daughters were telling us that there's a person in their church right now that's causing problems that's probably going to cause a church split. And you're there and you see Larry just loves these people. And ministry's hard. And so you see this, and it really just told me that there's such a need because like their grandson, he's coming to West Coast Bible College, but if Andrew doesn't go back to that church, there's a likelihood that church is just going to eventually die out. And I was talking to him about churches, and I'm like, if you're not happy here, you can find another church in Shelbyville. They're like, you've got to drive. There's churches, but to find a church that teaches truth, you've got to drive 45 minutes or more. They have people in their church who drive over an hour to go to church there. That's massive when you're paying $11 a gallon for gas. It's big. And so we lose sight of just really what a blessing we have and the privileges that we have. And then I look at Larry, and I mean, he's getting older, but man, he's still, even at his age, he still has this passion, this drive. He still loves these people. The next slide. These are just kind of pictures from the day. This is their church. They renovated it through COVID. Mary had pictures of the inside, but their first floor is kind of like their fellowship hall. Their church is actually on the second floor. Next picture. That was their grandson, Andrew, interpreting for me. It was kind of funny because you'd say something, and there was a couple times he looked at me and he's like, I don't know how to interpret that word. So this goes back to what I said, why it's so important that you know the language, because then I'm thinking, I'm like, okay, what's another way I can put this so that he understands it, so that he can translate it, so they can understand it. And so it's so important to have people who speak the language. And you need to be praying for Andrew because he's going off to Bible college. And I'll be honest, he might be the only lifeline for that church. Next picture. These are some of the ladies. If you remember Debbie, there's Debbie and some of the other ladies in the church. Next picture. There's your downtown Brussels and the national flag of Belgium. Next picture. The crosswalks even are vibrantly. I love how they pay homage to Noah. What's that? Yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, the national flag of Belgium. That's like, and here's the thing she told me. Justin can attest to this or not, but she says Germany's even worse. They really promote LGBT and you can't homeschool in Germany, right? Yeah. And why do you think that is? I'm just going to go out as a conspiracy theorist, but if they can train your kids, they can indoctrinate them how they want to indoctrinate them. Right? And this is where we got to be careful. This is why I don't like to get into politics too much, but this is why we've got to know who's running and we've got to at least vote for the best of the worst sometimes, because if we don't and we leave it in the control of man, it's going to get ugly. Next picture. There were, I don't remember what, I think this might have been the cathedral or one of them. Next picture. You know, you've got these cathedrals everywhere, and you're going to see they're like in all these countries. They're gorgeous. Here's one thing about all these cathedrals. They're big, they're massive, they're incredible architecture. You go inside of them and they're just cold. You got people everywhere taking pictures, you know. You got people eating in there, talking in there, and they are not a place of God. It's sad. Next picture. This was, I can't show you all of it. This was really, you know, for the church. I wish I could zoom down and show you the whole thing. This is the pulpit that they had. It's this big, massive, wooden, ornate pulpit, and it's got like a snake that goes around it. And I'm like, man, you guys need to build me one of those. That'd be so. It's so gaudy and so gothic, but it was really wild to see it, and you know, just the architecture and the amount of time that goes into these things, and it's so sad because they're just dead. Next picture. I'm not sure what some of these are, but Brussels is the home of the European Union. And if you're familiar with it, it's not there anymore. There's a statue that was called Europa, and it basically is mocking at Christianity. And they've taken it down, but it's somewhere. I think it's probably inside, and they bow down to it every day. I don't know. Next picture. Monday, we went to Paris, which was kind of a bucket list thing. So that was really cool. We got to see a lot of Paris. Paris, once again, is spiritually dark. I'll show some of the pictures from Paris. You go to the next slide. The Eiffel Tower. Now, I've got to be honest. If you're like me, you know, you think of Paris, what do you think of? The Eiffel Tower? You think, it's just a building. It's not that big. I think the coolest part about Paris was the Eiffel Tower. It was really amazing to see that. And I don't know why, when you see it, you're just kind of like, whoa, this is really cool. It's really tall. Yeah. I don't know. I guess I have to Google it. I don't know. It's really tall. We went all around it. We went under and took pictures, and, you know, we got tons of pictures of the Eiffel Tower, but it's big. And they've got an elevator. You could take it all the way up. We didn't do it. Next picture. This is the Arc de Triomphe, and that's like where they defeated, and if you know history, you know it better than I do, so I'm not even going to try to say what it is. Next picture. Next one. Is that Notre Dame? Or no, I think the next one is. No, not yet. This is another building, you know. Historical, because it's there. If you know what it is, you can speak up. I don't know what they are. Next picture. I took pictures of, I thought this was really cool because Paris is it's awesome how all the buildings look the same. Next picture. I did this one on purpose. That is exactly what you think it is. Huh? He didn't pay. And I'm saying this because this guy is, and you can't see anything, but you know what he's doing. We're sitting on the bus. This is right across from the main bus stop. People are literally walking by him, and he is not a homeless person. He is your everyday worker. When we went to Germany, as we were getting ready to walk into the parking garage, there's a guy in a suit doing exactly that. And when you drive down the roads, they don't have rest stops like we do. They do, but they're further apart. People pull over, and they don't try to hide behind their doors or anything like that. They just stand right there in the open and do it. That's just the way it is. Next picture. I just wanted to throw that. Somebody might be offended, but I mean, that's the way it is. And if you get offended, that's the culture. Tuesday, we were talking, and we're like, okay, we want to go, and since we're over here and we can go to these countries, we can go to like Germany really easy. It was like an hour and a half away. We did go on the Autobahn. I learned an interesting fact. It's in kilometers per hour. Like I think we were going 130 kilometers an hour. It sounds fast. It's not. It's like 80 or 90. But you can tell me, I don't know if this is true, but Debbie said her insurance, if she gets in an accident over 130 kilometers an hour, she's not covered. So I don't, is it like that over there? Yeah. So, I mean, you can go any speed you want, but there is a fine line in there. If you're going too fast, they're not going to pay for the insurance. Yeah. We went to, some people call it, it's Cone. I probably don't say that right? Yeah, I'm not going to try that. Or Cologne, some of us know it as. And why do they have the difference between the two names? I think it had something to do with Germany. You wanted to be German and everybody else. So we had two choices. I don't remember, we were going to go to one place that had these Roman ruins and we could go through Luxembourg, which is another country, but nobody could decide. So my son Gary said, hey, you should go check out the Cologne Castle, or the cathedral, so that's what we did. So you go there, and here's something I've noticed. Every country has its own cultural issues. Debbie speaks French fluently and English, some German, and some Dutch. So like when we go to Paris, we were going to do the hop-on, hop-off bus. We had some mobility issues with Mary Campbell and my Mary, and so we get off, and it took us an hour and a half to figure out because it wasn't at the train station. We go to Cologne, and we get off, and literally we're standing outside the parking garage like this. I don't know what to do. And none of us speak enough German good enough to get around, and we're just trying to figure it out. Now, you see the cathedral, but everywhere you go, and I say this is something because this is important, like if you're going to another country, it is so important that you learn their language. It's so important that you learn the heart language so you can communicate with the people. And they all have their cultural issues. And each one, like the Germans, they're really stiff-necked people. Best food we had was at this German restaurant. But when the waiter came up, if we weren't ready, he got mad and just walked away. And then when he came back and we weren't ready, he got mad again and he waited longer before he came back. And then when you wanted something, you couldn't get him to come back. And then when we were done, he wanted us to tip him. And we did. But you have these cultural issues, and you see these cathedrals, and you see the beauty, but the coldness. Now, here's something really cool. In the Cologne Cathedral, it was, not anymore, right? Because Ulm was taking it over. It was, not anymore. Oh, see, this is a German thing. We got to have the biggest cathedral. They had the tallest cathedral. What's that? Oh, Spain beat them. See, now somebody's got to fix this and put like some super glue, something on there. It was the tallest cathedral at one time. And here's the unique thing, and we'll see the pictures. It supposedly houses the bodies of the three kings, the three wise men. Yeah. All right, next picture. So this is German. I don't know what it says, but next picture. That is the cathedral. And there's actually, and I have pictures, it's kind of interesting. They have a part off of it where they renovate the pieces and things like that. Next picture. There's where they are. They're housed in there. Now, I'm kind of thinking it's about like 4.5, 5 feet long. I'm like, it must be their bones because they're not going to fit in there. They were short guys. But they got the three kings in there, so they say. That's why I noticed a lot of these cathedrals have some pretty cool claims, like the blood of Jesus, the body of the three wise men, Something like this is pretty good. Next picture. And it's beautiful. Every cathedral you go in, it's beautiful, but they're cold. And I think it was either this cathedral, I think it was Cologne, or it was Brussels. I don't remember. I think it was Cologne. We went in there, and they had a statistic. It cost 44,000 euros a day to maintain that building. 16,060,000 euros a year. And I'm like, do you know how many people they're probably leading to the Lord in there? 0. It's kind of sad. But they become just these historical sites, and they become these just basically for travelers to come and check them out. Next picture. Here's the inside of it. Like I said, beautiful, ornate, amazing. Next picture. Dave and Mary. Next picture. Debbie. Next picture. All right, Wednesday, Dave and Mary went back, they headed back home. We spent time with Debbie and her sister Becky. And we went to Dinant, I'm probably saying it wrong, in Namur. They were two citadels, two military forts that sit up on a hill. And I'm going to tie this together because trust me on this. Next picture. So there's Becky, there's Debbie, and hey, there's Mary and me. Yeah. Next picture. So that cathedral is built into the wall, and if you can see above it, that's the fort. And so, like, they would be up there, and beside, you can't really see it, but beside it, there's like these staircases with 400 and something stairs. Like, if you're going to take this fort, you've got to climb this. I'm like, I surrender before I climb those stairs. Like, you can have it. We don't want it that bad. But they would fight, and they would kill each other, and these were significant in battles. And it was kind of cool because, I don't know if you know this or not, this might have even been the place where it was, maybe not, but I think Dinant was maybe where the saxophone was created, because they had all these saxophones and different, flags and stuff. But yeah, Belgium's known for the saxophone came from there, waffles, chocolate, French fries, and here's the really important one, Smurfs. The Smurfs were from there. So next picture. This is the top view, so behind that building from up in there, absolutely gorgeous. Next picture. And here's what it looks like. You kind of get a view of the water, and you can see the towns. Here's a significant thing, like when you look at like Germany, you look at America, when we went to war, we would not go in and destroy like cultural significant places, whereas other countries would. So like if there were bombing in some cities, like in a lot of German cities, if they were bombed really heavily, you would see that the buildings are more of a modern building. That's why some of these cathedrals that stood are kind of a testimony to the fact that they didn't get bombed. But next picture. And this is Namur. Next picture. And these are just these big cities. I don't know if you can read that, but this goes back to what I was saying. BT gay is okay. And it's not being gay is okay. I asked him to translate it. It's a little gay is okay. That's really what it was. So, and it's everywhere. And I say that because, and don't get me wrong, I'm not a homophobe or anything like that. But God makes it clear that homosexuality is a sin. But once again, it is thrown in everybody's face that this is okay. This is how I was made. Well, God makes it clear. God created you uniquely, wonderful. You're created in the image of God. And so, but people are so deceived. And so I can get you a date if you want one. Next picture. The 21st, we went to Anderlecht. There's a castle there. It was kind of cool because, like, Mary's into this stuff. I'm really not. I like it, but it's really about spending time with them. We went there with Larry and Jean. They didn't tour with us because they're older, and cars are small, and so not everybody could go everywhere. So we got to finally spend Thursday with Larry and Jean, and their grandson Andrew came. And so we're going through this castle in Anderlecht, kind of outside of it. And I didn't know this, but he's like, man, the history, the Belgian history in this place. It'd be kind of like if you went to Florida or someplace, George Washington Carver means something to us, and certain things mean something to us. It means a lot to them. So next picture. This is the castle. Next picture. These are like the armor. Whatever, all the wood. Next picture. Next picture. And so the 22nd, we began our journey home. It was incredible. It was an awesome opportunity to minister to the Taylors and the Campbells. Europe is beautiful, but it's spiritually dark. And it reminded me, because I've got just a couple minutes, it reminded me that we need missionaries there. One thing I've learned when we lived in another country is this. It's easy as Americans. We can be very arrogant. Oh, we're so good and we're so perfect, and we got to be careful because that puts us in a bad position. And the saying in 1 Corinthians 10:12, take heed lest you fall. We're fallen. I can say this: when we were in the UK, the biggest burden I had to come back to the States and pastor was the fact that America's becoming like that. It's gotten to the place where people don't have a need of God, because they have everything that they need. And people are so busy. One of the things that we struggle with in the UK, you could talk to people about soccer, football all day long. You could talk to them about sports, but as soon as you talk about God, church, religion, Jesus, anything like that, poof, the doors come down. I remember Justin in his presentation, he was talking about the hardest thing to do is to get into a conversation with someone. And we're Americans, we come over and we think we're so great. I learned this. It's not that we're right and they're wrong. They just do things, we do things differently than each other. And they're not going to change to accommodate you. And you need to go over there and you need to humble yourself if you want to win them to the Lord. It's a relational thing. And this is something we were talking about with the missionaries. And this is something we see in America. I can't tell you the number of UK, Europe moments I have in small town Shelbyville. Just like over there, people are so busy, they don't have time for each other. They don't have time for the Lord. And we've got to be careful because we're becoming just like them, where we're so busy and we're so hard-hearted and we don't need God because we have everything that we need. And I'd say this, one thing I've learned, like with visas and things like that about the UK, it's becoming a closed country. And they're like, I want nothing to do with God. And God is like, okay. He's going to take his hand off of them. But there's a need there for missionaries. I show these pictures because it's really cool. There's some awesome things. Paris is beautiful. Paris needs Jesus. And you can, here's how I'm going to sell it. You can live in beautiful Paris and you can minister Jesus Christ. Right? All it's going to cost you is to surrender your life. Learn the language and minister to people. You see these places because like the first place, Ghana, that we were at, Larry Taylor's wanted to start a church there forever. It's absolutely beautiful. They need churches there. They need people in Europe. We need people in Shelbyville. And so I was thinking, because I want to read these statistics real quick. This is just BBFI, and there's other missions agencies, but I just happened to get this before we left, and I thought, I want to share this with the church. So in 2025, BBFI and WIN, it's a combined agency, the missionaries during 2025, they received a total of $37,689,011.66. And here's what they've reaped from it. Professions of faith, 140,806. Baptisms, 15,009. Leaders in training, 13,195. New missions or Bible studies, 874. Churches that have been organized, 154. This is just in 2025. And in there, John makes this note, the missions director. He says, pray with us at either or both 9:38 a.m., Matthew 9:38. Pray ye therefore the Lord of the harvest, that he will send forth laborers into his harvest. And I started thinking about that because I think it first starts here, right? We need to first surrender to God and be his hands and feet here. But we also need to go across the pond, across the world, and all these countries. There's such a great need, and we need to recognize the need. As I say it, you go to these countries, and you're like, oh, man, that's beautiful. And it's awesome because we got to check off bucket list things like going to Paris. But the reality is, everywhere you go, you see the need in the people's faces. You know, we need more people like Justin and Katie who are going to go there. And he's an anomaly because he grew up in Germany. He can already speak the language. We need to keep people like them on the field. We need more people who are willing to go there and say, Lord, I'm going to do whatever it takes. And it doesn't necessarily, we think, oh, well, you know, Larry Taylor's not a successful missionary because he's never turned a church over to a national. Larry Taylor's a successful missionary because he has been obedient to the Lord his entire ministry. And we don't even know until we get to glory to see how the Lord is going to work, what he's done in his ministry. It's not about numbers, it's about people. And one of the things we were talking about, and I see it, we're so busy that we don't even have time to invest in people. And let me explain what I mean by that. This will kind of be my final thought. If you want to share the gospel with someone, we got to Paris. As soon as we got off the train, there was this group of people from some Asian country. They had these red hats on and Jesus, and they're street preaching. Praise God for them, you know. The cops were kind of watching them. They probably end up getting kicked out of there. But they were sharing the gospel. And I would say this, right? Street preachers, for the most part, everybody just walks by them. But there is, like anything, you fish enough, they're going to get some people. But I believe the most effective way is to form relationships with people. But we're so busy that we don't even have time to go outside of our comfort zones to reach people. I was talking with Gio today, and I asked him. He said it's okay. And when Gio moved here from Arkansas, he moved to Westfield, West something. Yeah, Indiana, in the middle of nowhere, Indiana. Then he moved to Shelbyville. And we were talking like, how did you find us as a church? Well, he did what everybody else does. He went on Google. And then he started visiting churches. And do you know why he wound up here? Chad Christian. You know why? Because Chad came up to him and he shook his hand and he talked to him and he made him feel welcome. He said, hey, you want to sit by me? This is what we need. We need people who are, when people come, to get somebody to come through those doors. I don't think we realize how difficult it is. You know, if you've been coming here for any amount of time, you could have the outline of a dead body right here and you'd walk around it and think nothing of it. But somebody who's visiting for the first time, if they walk in here and they find the slightest thing that throws them off, they'll never come back. And if we're not friendly and we're not loving and we don't go outside of just, hey, how are you in this building, we're ever going to make those relationships or ever be able to share the gospel with them. And so we've got to be willing to say, Lord, I'm going to inconvenience myself. And I'm going to say, hey, what are you doing after church? Do you want to go to lunch? Or try to find ways beyond just here Sunday morning for a few minutes or Wednesday. And I'll say this, we have a special church because not every church is as friendly as our church is. We need to work on getting to the next level. And we need to work on being more inviting. But then we need to intentionally be investing in people's lives. Find somebody, find some place where you can minister so that you can share the love of Christ. Invest in it, and I promise you it's going to pay off. I look at these churches, and I see this, and here's what's going to happen. If we're too busy, before too long, this church will die. Right? We'll hang in there for a while. We'll fight the good fight, but the next generation will come along, and if we don't pick up the torch, it's going to go out. It really will. And I say this because, like, when I applied here, I went to the BBFI website. And there's the BBFI website, and there's a section on there for churches looking for pastors. I'm not looking for a job, but I go on there from time to time, and here's why. When I went on there and I was looking for a job, there was about 5 or 6 churches that were looking for pastors. There's about 10 or 15 now. By the time I retire, there's probably going to be 20 or 30. And that number is going to keep growing because we don't have young men and young women surrendering to the ministry. We don't have people who are willing to say, you know what, Lord, I'm going to give you my life because you gave me yours. We want to have the perfect job. We want to make money. We want to do what we want to do, and we forsake the Lord. And if we don't get serious and step up, before we know it, time's going to run out. And there are people, you don't have to, go into all the world that's ethnos. We have it right here in Shelbyville. You don't have to go far to find the world. You don't have to go far to find someone who needs Jesus. I need the grace of Jesus every day of my life. Think about the people you work with, the people you live by. And so as I go there, it was awesome to go there. It was work. We ministered, and I'm so thankful. We had the ability to minister to missionaries that we've supported for a long time. We've had the ability to see some beautiful places, but it just reminds you that there is another country 6 hours ahead of us, 4,500 miles away, that needs the gospel. We need it right here. They need it there. There's not a wrong zip code. And the question is, you're fearfully, wonderfully made. You're uniquely made. God has a special plan for each and every one of us. I don't know what that is, but he does. And you're not going to find it if you don't ask him. Let's pray. Father, we thank you for the privilege we've had to go on this trip and to be an encouragement to these missionaries, and for Mary to speak into these ladies' lives and just to hear the testimonies of how much it affected them. The opportunity to preach at Larry's church and just to see the love that this family has for these people in Belgium. People we've never met, people we've never heard of, but they're important not only to Larry, but to you. And if they're important to you, they've got to be important to us. And there's so many people that we're surrounded by right here in Shelbyville that you love, that you want to reach, and you want to do it through us. And so, Father, help us to see beyond ourselves. Help us to see beyond the here and now and our own personal problems, and help us to see the needs in other people. Help us to love them like you would love them, and help us to live lives that are set apart so that they can see light in darkness. Man, there's so much spiritual darkness around us. There's so many people that are hurting that need you. Help us to be that church that says, Lord, whatever you want us to do, we will do. And so, Father, I pray that you speak to our hearts, each and every one of us, because we're all called to be your hands and feet. And we're all called to do something different so that those around us can see Jesus in us. So as we leave here today, Father, I pray above everything else that you'll leave us just burdened, I hope, just a little bit more than before, so that we're willing to step outside of our comfort zone to love those around us. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.